Hollywood has always looked like a dream. The lights, the red carpets, the dazzling stars make audiences believe this place is the paradise of fame. But behind the applause lies a harsh truth. One scandal, one wrong word, or one powerful enemy, and an entire career can vanish in an instant. In this video, we'll uncover 30 of the most shocking stories of actors and actresses who once ruled the screen, only to be cast out by Hollywood. From Golden Age legends to rising stars, from rebels who dared to defy the system to victims of prejudice and tragedy, each of them reached the top, only to be erased from the very world they helped build. And stay with us until the very end, because the final name on this list will leave you completely surprised. 1. Val Kilmer. In the late 1980s and 1990s, Val Kilmer was Hollywood royalty. He was Iceman in Top Gun, the cocky rival who stole scenes from Tom Cruise. He transformed into Jim Morrison in The Doors, channeling the rock legend with haunting precision. Then came Batman Forever, where Kilmer wore the cowl of the Dark Knight himself. With looks, talent, and versatility, he wasn't just another actor, he was the kind of star Hollywood was built on. But behind the camera, a very different story was being written. Kilmer earned a reputation as temperamental, uncompromising, even hostile. Directors whispered about shouting matches, crews complained about shutdowns caused by his refusal to cooperate. He pushed himself and everyone around him to extremes, believing greatness demanded nothing less. Yet in an industry obsessed with efficiency and compliance, those qualities turned from genius to liability. By the late 1990s, the tide had turned. Major studios, wary of chaos, quietly crossed his name off casting lists. Roles that should have kept him in the spotlight went to actors deemed easier. Kilmer still worked, but the momentum was gone. His downfall became a reminder that in Hollywood, talent is treasured only if it comes wrapped in obedience. 2. Sean Young. In the 1980s, Sean Young seemed destined for stardom. As Rachel, the mysterious replicant in Blade Runner, she delivered one of the most iconic performances in science fiction history. Her beauty, grace, and intensity made her unforgettable, and Hollywood positioned her as the next great leading lady. Yet her refusal to stay quiet became her undoing. Young spoke her mind, challenged directors, and demanded roles she believed she deserved. Most famously, she campaigned relentlessly to play Catwoman in Batman Returns. She even arrived at Warner Brothers, dressed head to toe in costume to prove she was perfect for the part. Instead of admiration, she received ridicule. The media branded her eccentric, and executives began whispering that she was unstable. Soon, the doors closed. The big-budget projects dried up, replaced by smaller films and background roles. To the public, Sean Young was still the face of Blade Runner, but to Hollywood, she became a problem to avoid. Her story lingers as a cautionary tale. Talent alone cannot shield an actor when the industry decides their ambition is too loud. 3. Robert Blake. Robert Blake's career was the kind of Hollywood story actors dream about. As a child in the 1930s, he appeared in the beloved Our Gang comedies. By adulthood, he had reinvented himself as a serious actor, earning acclaim for roles in Cold Blood, and later winning an Emmy Award for Baretta. For decades, he was respected as one of the industry's most versatile performers, known for his intensity and commitment. But in the year 2001, everything collapsed. Blake's wife, Bonnie Lee Bakley, was found shot dead in a car outside a Los Angeles restaurant. The scandal was immediate, and the media frenzy painted him as the villain before the trial even began. Though Blake was eventually acquitted in criminal court, the shadow of suspicion never lifted. In Hollywood, reputation is everything. Studios distanced themselves, directors stopped calling, and friends turned away. His decades of work vanished under the weight of a single tragedy. Robert Blake lived the rest of his life in obscurity. A man once celebrated for his artistry, now remembered mostly for the scandal that ended him. 4. Fatty Arbuckle. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was one of the first true superstars of cinema. In the 1910s and early 1920s, he was among the highest-paid actors in the world. Beloved for his slapstick comedy and larger-than-life presence, Arbuckle helped shape the very foundation of Hollywood. He launched the careers of greats like Buster Keaton and influenced Charlie Chaplin. Audiences adored him. Studios depended on him. Then, in 1921, came the scandal that destroyed him. Arbuckle was accused of raping and killing actress Virginia Rappe during a party at a San Francisco hotel. The press sensationalized every lurid detail, turning the trial into one of the first great celebrity scandals in American history. After 3 trials, Arbuckle was acquitted, and even the jury apologized to him. But it no longer mattered. His films were banned, his reputation obliterated, and the industry that once relied on him erased his name. Arbuckle spent the rest of his life trying and failing to return. Hollywood had made him a star, then unmade him with equal force. His story remains one of the clearest examples of how public opinion and the studio's fear of scandal can end a career regardless of the truth. 5. Tippi Hedren. In the early 1960s, Tippi Hedren was poised to become Alfred Hitchcock's next great star. Discovered by the director in a television commercial, she was cast as the lead in The Birds and later in Marnie. Her cool elegance, piercing gaze, and natural presence seemed to place her in the lineage of Grace Kelly, another Hitchcock muse who had been transformed into royalty. For a time, Hedren was on the brink of superstardom. But fame came with a hidden cost. Behind the camera, Hitchcock's obsession turned into torment. Hedren later revealed that the director subjected her to relentless harassment and control. When she resisted his advances, his admiration curdled into revenge. Hitchcock wielded his immense power not to promote her, but to sabotage her career. He ensured she would never work in a film of the same scale again. Though Hedren continued to act, the opportunities that should have been hers were denied. Hollywood, silent to her plight, moved on. What might have been a glittering career was cut short by one man's cruelty and an industry unwilling to protect her. Today, her story resonates not only as a personal tragedy, but as a chilling reminder of how abuse of power can erase even the brightest promise. 6. Jean Seberg. Jean Seberg's rise was nothing short of meteoric. In 1958, at just 19 years old, she was chosen from thousands of hopefuls to star in Otto Preminger's Saint Joan. A few years later, her role in Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless made her the face of the French New Wave. With her cropped blonde hair and effortless charm, Seberg symbolized a new kind of cool, modern, international, untouchable. Hollywood embraced her, and Europe adored her. But admiration soon turned into surveillance. In the late 1960s, Seberg openly supported the Black Panther Party, a move that enraged the FBI. Through its infamous COINTELPRO program, the Bureau launched a smear campaign against her, planting false stories in the press that she was carrying the child of a Black Panther member. The public humiliation devastated her, and Hollywood, eager to avoid controversy, began to turn away. The weight of the harassment proved unbearable. Roles grew scarce, her personal life unraveled, and in 1979, Seberg was found dead in Paris, the victim of an apparent suicide. Many believe the relentless campaign to destroy her reputation played a direct role in her decline. Jean Seberg's story remains one of Hollywood's most haunting tragedies, a reminder that politics, prejudice, and fear can silence even the most luminous voices. 7. Amanda Bynes. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Amanda Bynes was America's sweetheart. She lit up Nickelodeon with The Amanda Show, her comedic brilliance earning comparisons to legends far beyond her age. By her teenage years, she was crossing over to the big screen with hits like She's the Man and Hairspray. Critics praised her sharp timing, audiences adored her, and Hollywood branded her as the rare child star who could transition seamlessly into adult success. But the glare of the spotlight was blinding. By her early 20s, the pressures of fame, constant scrutiny, and personal struggles began to consume her. Headlines no longer celebrated her talent. They chronicled DUI arrests, bizarre public behavior, and a spiral on social media that left fans stunned. The young actress who once seemed invincible was suddenly the subject of ridicule and pity. Hollywood, an industry allergic to unpredictability, moved quickly. Casting directors stopped calling, producers withdrew, and projects evaporated. By 2010, Amanda Bynes had quietly announced her retirement from acting. Though she later sought treatment and even studied fashion design, the promise of her early career was gone. Amanda Bynes' story remains one of the clearest examples of how child stardom can turn into tragedy, not through a lack of talent, but because the very system that built her up never offered her the support to withstand its weight. 8. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf's rise was meteoric. From his start on Disney Channel's Even Stevens, he leapt into blockbuster stardom with Michael Bay's Transformers. By his mid-20s, he had worked with directors like Steven Spielberg and Oliver Stone, earning a reputation as both a bankable star and a serious actor. Charismatic, unpredictable, and driven, he was marketed as the face of Hollywood's future. Yet the very unpredictability that made him fascinating on screen began to unravel off it. LaBeouf developed a reputation for public outbursts, bar fights, drunken arrests, and erratic stunts like wearing a paper bag over his head at premieres. More troubling were allegations of abuse from former partners, accusations that cast him not as a rebel artist, but as a dangerous man. The fallout was swift. Studios distanced themselves, collaborators cut ties, and the actor who once anchored franchises found himself relegated to the margins of independent film. His artistry remained undeniable, but the stain of controversy was too strong for mainstream Hollywood to overlook. Shia LaBeouf's downfall is less about one scandal than a pattern of self-destruction. His story is a reminder that in Hollywood, brilliance and chaos often walk hand in hand, but chaos always wins in the end. 9. Thora Birch. In the late 1990s, Thora Birch seemed destined for greatness. She delivered a breakout performance in American Beauty, a film that defined an era and won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Soon after, she starred in Ghost World, an offbeat coming-of-age story that critics hailed as one of the sharpest of its time. With her expressive eyes and unflinching honesty on screen, Birch was seen as the face of a new generation of Hollywood talent. But behind the promise of her career was an obstacle she could not control: her parents. Reports emerged that her father, who also served as her manager, was notoriously difficult. He interfered on film sets, argued with producers, and created an environment so disruptive that directors began to avoid casting her altogether. Instead of being remembered for her talent, Birch became associated with behind-the-scenes chaos. By the early 2000s, the momentum was gone. Big roles dried up, and though she continued to act, the prestige projects that should have propelled her to stardom never returned. Thora Birch's decline was not the result of scandal or failure, but of being trapped in circumstances she could not escape. Her story is a sobering reminder that in Hollywood, even immense talent can be silenced by forces outside an actor's control. 10. Corey Feldman. In the 1980s, Corey Feldman was everywhere. He was part of an elite group of child stars who seemed untouchable, appearing in classics like Stand By Me, The Goonies, and The Lost Boys. With charisma and a sense of youthful rebellion, Feldman became a cultural icon, representing an entire generation of coming-of-age films. But Feldman's teenage years revealed the darker underbelly of Hollywood. He later spoke openly about the abuse he endured as a child star, alleging that powerful figures in the industry preyed on young actors. His bravery in exposing these secrets, however, came at a steep cost. Instead of being supported, he was branded as troubled, his words dismissed as instability. As the years passed, the roles disappeared. Studios avoided him, not because he lacked talent, but but because his truth was too uncomfortable for the system to acknowledge. Feldman turned to music and independent projects, but the Hollywood machine that had once made him a star shut him out. Corey Feldman's story is not only a personal tragedy, but also a condemnation of an industry that protects predators and punishes whistleblowers. He should have been remembered as one of the greats of his generation, yet Hollywood chose to silence him instead. 11. Taylor Momsen. Taylor Momsen's Hollywood story began almost as soon as she could walk. At just 7 years old, she starred as Cindy Lou Who in How the Grinch Stole Christmas, capturing hearts with her wide eyes and innocence. A few years later, she became a household name as Jenny Humphrey in the hit teen drama Gossip Girl. With striking looks and a budding screen presence, Momsen was being groomed as the next young star who could bridge television fame into Hollywood superstardom. But as her teenage years unfolded, Momsen's relationship with the industry soured. Known for skipping shoots, clashing with producers, and leaning into a rebellious persona, she quickly earned a reputation for being difficult. At the same time, her passion was shifting away from acting and toward music. With her band, The Pretty Reckless, she embraced a darker, edgier identity, one that stood in sharp contrast to the polished image television networks had built for her. By the early 2010s, Momsen had left Hollywood entirely. While she found artistic fulfillment and even commercial success in music, her acting career was effectively over. Hollywood, which had once invested in her as a future starlet, turned the page without hesitation. Taylor Momsen's trajectory shows how the system abandons those who refuse to play its game, even if the decision to walk away is partly their own. 12. Randy Quaid. Randy Quaid was once one of Hollywood's most reliable character actors. He earned an Academy Award nomination for The Last Detail in the 1970s, and later became a familiar face in blockbusters like Independence Day and the National Lampoon's Vacation series. With his mix of eccentric humor and grounded sincerity, Quaid brought depth to every role, carving out a career that spanned decades. Then, in the late 2000s, his life unraveled in bizarre and public fashion. He and his wife were arrested multiple times on charges ranging from burglary to fraud. Even more shocking were Quaid's claims that a secret cabal of Hollywood star whackers was hunting him and other celebrities. His erratic behavior escalated to the point that he fled the United States, seeking asylum in Canada. The industry, once eager to cast him, wanted nothing to do with the chaos. Studios stopped hiring him, former colleagues distanced themselves, and his once respected name became a punchline. The actor who had helped anchor some of Hollywood's biggest films now lived on the fringes, remembered more for conspiracy theories than for his craft. Randy Quaid's fall is a stark lesson in how quickly credibility can vanish. Hollywood thrives on stories larger than life, but when reality blurs into delusion, even a decades-long career can be erased overnight. 13. Katherine Heigl. In the mid-2000s, Katherine Heigl was at the height of her powers. She played Dr. Izzy Stevens on Grey's Anatomy, a role that earned her an Emmy Award and made her a fan favorite on one of television's most popular shows. Her transition to film was seamless. Knocked Up became a box office hit, and suddenly Heigl was Hollywood's go-to romantic comedy lead. She seemed unstoppable, with studios lining up to offer her starring roles. But Heigl made a move few actresses dared. She spoke her mind. In interviews, she criticized Knocked Up as sexist, and later withdrew her name from Emmy consideration, claiming the writing on Grey's Anatomy had not been worthy. What might have been seen as honesty in another profession was viewed as arrogance in Hollywood. Producers labeled her ungrateful, and whispers spread that she was difficult to work with. Within a few years, the backlash was complete. Major studios stopped casting her in leading roles, and the career that had seemed destined for longevity all but collapsed. Heigl still works today, but she never regained her former status. Her story stands as a warning. In Hollywood, speaking out against the system often means exile, no matter how talented you are. 14. Isaiah Washington. Isaiah Washington's career reached its peak when he landed the role of Dr. Preston Burke on Grey's Anatomy. His powerful screen presence and layered performance made him a central figure on the show, and audiences embraced him as one of the pillars of the ensemble cast. Hollywood finally seemed ready to give him the recognition he deserved after years of steady work. Then came the scandal. In 2006, reports surfaced that Washington had used a homophobic slur during an on-set altercation. The story exploded in the press, and despite his public apologies, the controversy refused to die down. By the following year, ABC made the decision to fire him from Grey's Anatomy. For Washington, the fallout was immediate and devastating. Casting offers dried up, and he struggled to find work of equal prominence. Hollywood, quick to protect its image, decided he was too great a risk. Once celebrated for his talent, Washington became a cautionary tale about how one mistake, no matter how regretted, can end a career in the unforgiving glare of the spotlight. 15. Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard's path to stardom was paved with undeniable talent. After years of steady work, his performance in Hustle and Flow earned him an Academy Award nomination in 2005. His delivery of the line, "It's hard out here for a pimp," became part of pop culture, and the song associated with the film even won an Oscar. Hollywood finally had in Howard a leading man who combined grit with vulnerability. Then came his golden ticket, Marvel Studios. Cast as Colonel James Rhodey Rhodes in Iron Man in 2008, Howard stood on the launchpad of what would become the biggest film franchise in history. His charisma and grounded presence balanced Robert Downey Jr.'s flamboyance, and fans looked forward to seeing him return in the sequels. But disputes over salary and contracts soon surfaced. Howard claimed Marvel slashed his pay for the second film, while the studio insisted negotiations broke down because of his behavior. The result was simple. By Iron Man 2, he was replaced by Don Cheadle. Overnight, Howard lost not just a role but a place in cinematic history. Though he later found success in television with Empire, the shadow of what might have been looms large. Terrence Howard's exile from Marvel remains one of Hollywood's most infamous examples of how quickly opportunity can vanish when money, power, and ego collide. 16. Ashley Judd. Ashley Judd was once one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. In the 1990s, she headlined thrillers like Kiss the Girls and Double Jeopardy, combining intelligence, strength, and glamour in a way few actresses could. She seemed to have cracked the elusive code of being both critically respected and commercially successful. But Judd's career took an unexpected turn when she stood up to one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. She accused Harvey Weinstein of sexual harassment, claiming he retaliated by blacklisting her from major projects. Most notably, director Peter Jackson later admitted she had been considered for The Lord of the Rings, but was dropped after Weinstein disparaged her behind closed doors. The result was devastating. At the very moment she should have ascended into A-list superstardom, her career stalled. While she continued to work, the marquee roles vanished, leaving her legacy diminished by forces outside her control. Years later, Judd emerged as one of the most prominent voices in the Me Too movement. Her courage helped change the industry, but it also revealed the heavy price of defiance. Ashley Judd's story is not just about exile. It is about how Hollywood often punishes truth-tellers long before it ever punishes abusers. 17. Brendan Fraser. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Brendan Fraser was everywhere. He swung through the jungle in George of the Jungle, fought cursed mummies in the Mummy trilogy, and even showed his dramatic chops in films like Gods and Monsters. With a mix of comedic timing, physical bravery, and boyish charm, he was the kind of leading man audiences adored. Hollywood had positioned him as both an action star and a relatable everyman. But then, almost without warning, Fraser vanished from the spotlight. For years, fans wondered why an actor at the peak of his popularity had disappeared. The truth emerged later. Fraser revealed that in the early 2000s, he had been sexually assaulted by a powerful Hollywood executive. After speaking up, he found himself quietly pushed aside. Roles dried up, invitations stopped coming, and the once bankable star was erased from major studio conversations. On top of that, his body had been worn down by years of performing his own stunts. Multiple surgeries left him physically broken, and the media mocked his changing appearance. The combination of personal trauma, industry retaliation, and physical decline created an exile he had not chosen. Though Fraser has since mounted a triumphant comeback with The Whale, winning an Academy Award in 2023, his years of silence remain a haunting reminder of Hollywood's ability to punish those who dare to reveal its darkest secrets. 18. Thuy Trang. Thuy Trang's story is one of both triumph and tragedy. In 1993, she became a household name as Trini Kwan, the Yellow Ranger in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. For millions of children around the world, she was a groundbreaking figure, a Vietnamese-born actress representing diversity in a genre often dominated by Western faces. She was admired not only for her martial arts moves on screen, but also for her quiet grace off it. Yet behind the colorful costumes and global fame, Hollywood offered her little. Typecasting and limited opportunities for Asian American actresses meant that substantial roles rarely came her way. Despite her talent and visibility, she found herself excluded from the mainstream industry that had briefly celebrated her. Tragically, Thuy Trang's story ended far too soon. In 2001, she died in a car accident at the age of 27. Fans around the world mourned, but her legacy became bittersweet, proof of how Hollywood can elevate someone into global recognition yet fail to sustain their career or give them the chances they deserve. Thuy Trang remains a symbol of lost potential, not because of scandal or missteps, but because an industry chose not to nurture her light. Her brief but powerful career continues to inspire fans, even as it highlights the systemic neglect that has silenced so many voices like hers. Judy Garland. From the moment she sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow in The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland became America's eternal sweetheart. With her voice that could break hearts and her radiant smile, she embodied everything audiences wanted to believe about Hollywood magic. By the 1940s and 1950s, she was one of the most recognizable faces in the world, starring in musicals that defined the golden age of cinema. But that golden glow was forged in cruelty. MGM, the studio that owned her contract, treated Garland not as a young woman but as property. Executives forced her onto extreme diets, criticizing her weight relentlessly. To keep her working, they supplied her with pills to wake her up and more pills to put her to sleep. By her teenage years, she was already addicted, trapped in a cycle engineered by the very system that made her a star. Garland fought back with sheer talent, delivering unforgettable performances in Meet Me in Street. Louie and a Star is Born, but behind the scenes, her life was unraveling. Failed marriages, financial ruin, and battles with addiction left her exhausted. In 1969, at just 47 years old, Judy Garland died from an overdose. Her passing shocked the world. To fans, she was Dorothy forever frozen in time. But to Hollywood, she was another reminder of how the machine chews up talent until nothing remains. Judy Garland's story is not just tragic, it is emblematic of how the very dream factory she helped build destroyed her in the end. 20. Brittany Murphy. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Brittany Murphy's star seemed destined to shine forever. With her quirky charm in Clueless, raw emotion in 8 Mile, and vulnerability in Girl Interrupted, she proved she could command both comedy and drama. She had the kind of presence that made audiences lean closer, rooting for her every time she appeared on screen. But Hollywood's embrace was fickle. Rumors swirled about her reliability on set, whispers of drug use and instability. The media, once enchanted by her bubbly personality, turned predatory, magnifying her struggles instead of celebrating her talent. As roles in major films dried up, she shifted towards smaller projects that never matched her early triumphs. Then, in December 2009, tragedy struck. Murphy collapsed in her Los Angeles home and was pronounced dead at just 32 years old. The official cause was pneumonia, complicated by anemia and prescription drug use. Yet speculation has never stopped. Toxic mold, foul play, even whispers of industry blacklisting surrounded her death, creating a cloud of mystery that lingers to this day. Her passing left fans heartbroken, not only because of her age but because of the sense of unfinished promise. Brittany Murphy should have had decades more to prove herself, to evolve, to become the star she was meant to be. Instead, she became yet another casualty of an industry that too often fails to protect its brightest lights. 21. O.J. Simpson. Before scandal consumed his name, Orenthal James Simpson was a hero. On the football field, he shattered records, becoming one of the greatest running backs in National Football League history. His charm and athleticism carried him seamlessly into Hollywood, where he appeared in commercials, television roles, and comedy hits like the Naked Gun series. For a time, Simpson was more than just a sports icon. He was a beloved entertainer whose crossover appeal made him a household name. Then came the night in June 1994 that changed everything. Simpson was accused of the brutal murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. The ensuing trial became a global spectacle, the so-called trial of the century. For months, every detail was dissected, every camera focused on him. Though he was acquitted in 1995, the verdict did not bring redemption. To much of the public, Simpson remained guilty in the court of opinion. Hollywood recoiled instantly. Endorsements were canceled, acting opportunities disappeared, and the man who once symbolized success across race and sport became a pariah. Later legal troubles, including a conviction for armed robbery in 2008, cemented his fall. O.J. Simpson's story is one of the most notorious examples of how fame can crumble. His exile was not just professional, it was cultural. Once a symbol of achievement, he became a living reminder of how scandal can erase even the brightest legacy. 22. Anita Ekberg. In the early 1960s, Anita Ekberg embodied cinematic glamour. Her role in Federico Fellini's La Dolce Vita, where she waded through Rome's Trevi Fountain in a flowing black dress, became one of the most iconic images in film history. With her statuesque beauty and magnetic presence, she was hailed as Europe's answer to Marilyn Monroe and embraced by Hollywood as a goddess of the silver screen. Yet behind the dazzling image lay a fragile career. Hollywood saw her only as the exotic beauty, typecasting her into roles that relied more on appearance than on performance. Once the novelty faded, substantial offers dwindled. Ekberg herself admitted later that she was never given the chance to explore her craft beyond the surface roles she was offered. As the decades passed, her fame dissolved into obscurity. By the 1980s, she was living in Italy, struggling financially, and largely forgotten by the industry that once adored her. When she died in 2015, tributes mourned the icon but could not erase the reality. Hollywood had abandoned her long before her final curtain call. Anita Ekberg's story reveals the cruel disposability of glamour. She gave the world one of cinema's most unforgettable images, but for Hollywood, that was enough. Once the lights dimmed, the industry moved on, leaving her to live out her days far from the glory she had once known. 23. Clara Bow. In the roaring 1920s, Clara Bow was Hollywood's brightest flame. She was christened the It Girl after her role in the film It, and with her magnetic screen presence, she embodied the spirit of the flapper era, youthful, carefree, and rebellious. Audiences adored her vivacity, and she became one of the first great box office sensations of the silent era. By her mid-20s, Clara Bow was among the most famous women in the world. But fame in Hollywood is rarely kind, especially to women ahead of their time. As sound entered cinema, Bow struggled with the transition. The press hounded her mercilessly, spinning tales of scandalous affairs, salacious parties, and supposed breakdowns. Much of it was rumor, but Hollywood is a place where perception often matters more than truth. Studios began to view her as unstable, and her star quickly dimmed. By the early 1930s, she walked away from the screen. Though she lived for decades afterward, Clara Bow never reclaimed her place in the industry. Her tragic decline was not the result of a single misstep, but of an era's cruelty, an industry eager to consume her image while discarding the woman herself. Today, she is remembered as both an icon of freedom and a victim of the very system she helped define. 24. Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr was often described as the most beautiful woman in the world. The Austrian-born actress enchanted audiences in the 1930s and 1940s with films like Algiers and Samson and Delilah. Her allure was undeniable, and Hollywood celebrated her as a screen goddess whose face alone could sell tickets. Yet Lamarr was far more than just a glamorous starlet. Away from the cameras, she was a brilliant inventor. During World War II, she co-created a frequency-hopping system designed to prevent torpedoes from being jammed, technology that later became the foundation for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. But in her time, Hollywood dismissed her intellect. Studios exploited her beauty, but ignored her genius, and her inventions went unrecognized for decades. As her film career waned, Lamarr faced financial troubles and retreat from public life. By the 1960s and 70s, she was virtually forgotten, living in isolation, while the world benefited from her innovations without giving her credit. It was not until late in the 20th century that her contributions were finally honored. Hedy Lamarr's story is a dual tragedy. She was denied respect as both an actress and an inventor. Hollywood reduced her to a face, when in truth, she was a mind far ahead of her time. Her legacy endures now, but the recognition came too late for her to see its full impact. 25. Amber Heard. For a moment, Amber Heard seemed destined to climb into Hollywood's highest ranks. With breakout roles in films like Aquaman and The Rum Diary, she combined striking beauty with the kind of presence that suggested she could be more than just another supporting actress. Her marriage to Johnny Depp only amplified her visibility, making her a constant figure in magazines and on red carpets. To the outside world, Heard was on the verge of lasting stardom. But in 2016 she filed for divorce and accused Depp of domestic abuse. What followed was one of the most bitterly publicized celebrity battles in modern history. Depp countered with defamation claims, and by the time the case reached court in 2022, it had become a global spectacle. Live streams of the trial drew millions, memes flooded the internet, and fans chose sides with near-religious fervor. Though Heard did win part of her counterclaim, public opinion largely turned against her. Online vitriol painted her as a manipulator, while petitions demanded she be removed from future films. Hollywood, ever cautious, quietly reduced her roles. When she moved abroad to Spain, it felt less like a fresh start than an exile. Amber Heard's downfall is unique in its scale. Rarely has an actress's private life eclipsed her career so completely. She remains a controversial figure, not because of her talent, but because Hollywood has decided she carries too much baggage to risk. 26. Armie Hammer. Armie Hammer's rise had the polish of a Hollywood fairy tale. Tall, handsome, and charismatic, he broke through with The Social Network, where he played both Winklevoss twins with effortless charm. By the time he starred opposite Timothée Chalamet in Call Me by Your Name in 2017, critics were hailing him as a serious leading man, one destined to carry major films for decades. Then, in 2021, his career imploded almost overnight. Leaked messages allegedly revealed violent sexual fantasies, including disturbing references to cannibalism. Women came forward with accusations of manipulation and abuse. Though Hammer denied criminal wrongdoing, the scandal was explosive and the industry reacted instantly. He was dropped from nearly every project, films, television shows, and even a Broadway play. The fall was staggering. Within weeks, Hammer went from being a celebrated actor with a promising future to a Hollywood outcast. His name became shorthand for one of the most shocking scandals of the decade, his image forever altered in the public imagination. Armie Hammer's story is a reminder of how fragile fame can be. In an era where public opinion moves at the speed of social media, a single controversy, true or not, can erase years of work. For Hammer, the exile is complete, and Hollywood shows no signs of forgiving. 27. Ezra Miller. For a time, Ezra Miller was one of Hollywood's most unconventional rising stars. Their breakout in We Need to Talk About Kevin showed a chilling maturity beyond their years, while the perks of being a wallflower cemented them as a voice for a new generation. With their androgynous style, fearless performances, and refusal to conform, Miller seemed destined to redefine what a modern movie star could be. That promise reached its peak when they were cast as Barry Allen, also known as The Flash, in the DC Extended Universe. A superhero franchise should have secured them for a decade of global stardom. Instead, it became the backdrop for a collapse that played out in headlines across the world. Between 2019 and 2022, Miller's name became synonymous with controversy. Arrests in Hawaii for disorderly conduct and assault, accusations of grooming and manipulation from families, and reports of cult-like behavior in Vermont all painted a picture of a star spiraling out of control. Each new allegation fueled outrage, and each silence from the studio deepened the scandal. When The Flash finally premiered in 2023, the film carried the weight of Miller's reputation. Though Warner Brothers released it, the damage was irreversible. Ezra Miller's career now exists in limbo, their talent overshadowed by chaos. Hollywood, once eager to embrace their uniqueness, has learned that unpredictability can quickly turn into liability. 28. Ansel Elgort. Ansel Elgort rose to fame as a heartthrob of the 2010s. In The Fault in Our Stars, he charmed millions as the witty, romantic Augustus Waters, and in Baby Driver, he proved he could command an action thriller with style. His tall frame, boyish grin, and easy charisma made him a favorite with both directors and audiences. By his early 20s, he was being positioned as one of Hollywood's next great leading men. Then, in 2020, allegations of sexual misconduct surfaced online. Though Elgort denied wrongdoing, the accusations spread like wildfire. Fans who once adored him turned skeptical, and the industry, wary of controversy, pulled back. The timing could not have been worse. Steven Spielberg's West Side Story was set to reintroduce him as a marquee star, yet the film's release was overshadowed by the scandal. In the years since, Elgort has continued to work, particularly in projects outside the Hollywood spotlight, but his momentum has stalled. The trajectory that should have propelled him into superstardom instead plateaued, leaving him in a strange middle ground still present but no longer celebrated. Ansel Elgort's story shows how quickly an actor can go from beloved to blacklisted in the age of social media. Whether guilty or not, the taint of accusation can be enough to derail a career that once seemed unstoppable. 29. James Franco. For years, James Franco was the definition of a Hollywood chameleon. He could headline stoner comedies like Pineapple Express, deliver Oscar-nominated performances in films like 127 Hours, and then surprise everyone by teaching college courses or directing indie films. By the mid-2010s, Franco was everywhere, a multi-hyphenate talent who seemed incapable of slowing down. But the same relentless ambition that made him fascinating also drew scrutiny. In 2018, during the height of the Me Too movement, multiple women accused Franco of sexual misconduct, many of them former students from his acting school. The allegations painted him as an abuser who had exploited his power under the guise of mentorship. Franco denied the claims, but the lawsuits and public backlash mounted. Hollywood moved quickly. His frequent collaborator Seth Rogen distanced himself, projects were shelved, and Franco vanished from the spotlight. The man who once seemed invincible, balancing art house respect and blockbuster appeal, was suddenly a ghost, his name toxic in an industry hypersensitive to public outrage. Though he has since attempted a quiet return, James Franco's exile remains one of the clearest examples of how swiftly the Me Too reckoning reshaped Hollywood. Once hailed as unstoppable, he now exists as a reminder of the blurred line between power and abuse in the Dream Factory. 30. Will Smith. For more than 3 decades, Will Smith was Hollywood's golden son. From The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to blockbuster juggernauts like Independence Day and Men in Black, he built a career that made him one of the most bankable stars in history. His ability to balance charm, humor, and intensity made him beloved across generations. By the time he won an Academy Award for King Richard in 2022, Smith seemed to have achieved the impossible, a flawless career arc in an industry that rarely forgives. And then came the slap. On March 27, 2022, during the live broadcast of the Academy Awards, Smith walked onto the stage and struck comedian Chris Rock across the face. The world froze. In a matter of seconds, decades of goodwill evaporated into shock and confusion. That same night, he won his first Oscar, but the triumph was drowned out by the controversy. The fallout was immediate. Smith resigned from the Academy, faced a 10-year ban from Oscar ceremonies, and saw multiple projects paused or canceled. Public opinion split. Some defended him as a man protecting his wife, while others condemned him as proof that even the brightest star can crack under pressure. Will Smith's exile is perhaps the most shocking of all, not because it revealed hidden crimes or conspiracies, but because it happened in plain sight, before millions of eyes. His story forces a haunting question. Can Hollywood forgive a moment that shattered its most sacred stage, or will Will Smith remain the cautionary tale of how quickly perfection can unravel? Outro. Hollywood is a place of dreams and a place of exile. These 30 stories show how quickly applause can turn to silence, and how fragile even the brightest careers can be. Some stars were undone by scandal, others by cruelty, and many simply because they dared to defy the system. From Judy Garland to Brittany Murphy, from Clara Bow to James Franco, and finally Will Smith, their journeys reveal that behind the glamour lies a ruthless truth. So who among them do you believe deserves redemption? And did the final name on this list leave you shocked? If you want more stories from the shadows of Hollywood, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.